I think critical media literacy is important, especially for citizens in a democracy. It's like supply of water or supply for food, because for making informed decisions at the ballot box, people need to be informed. So it's important that they distinguish what is quality information and what is non-reliable information. So that's why media literacy is very important in a democracy, and the earlier you start teaching that, the better. Well, yes, a free independent press is one of the most important features in a democracy, because otherwise we don't have any control of what corporate business or political power, those in political power are doing. So there is actually only the fourth estate, the free press, and if this press is restrained by limitations, or for example by a close relationship to those in power, then this is not really beneficial for the public interest. And that's why a free independent press is important, and therefore it needs certain governance structures that make sure that the press can operate in an autonomous and independent manner.
And do you feel that, compared to what you've seen in the United States, do you feel that Germany and Japan have a truly free independent press?
Well, there is certainly room for improvement. I think it's always a long process where it's very difficult to reach an ideal state. So there are always many issues in press freedom, no matter where, also in Germany and Japan. So it's important that people are attentive, and that the public has an awareness of that, what kind of risks there are for press and media independence. And it's necessary to always watch what is going on in the media system, so that there are certain triggers or alerts when media independence gets infringed. Well, yes, in an election year, well, from a democratic point of view, media literacy is extremely important, especially even more so in an election year, because people need to make their decision at the ballot box. So this means they need to have good and quality information, and they need to be able to distinguish reliable from non-reliable information. So it's important that they use as many sources as possible, as many diverse sources as possible, and also are able to judge what is good and what is non-reliable information. And of course this is even more true in an election year, because people need to make a very important decision, and every single individual's decision counts. So I think everyone has a responsibility to make an effort also to look for reliable information. And it's not enough just to believe in one's own beliefs, but also let one's own opinions and convictions get these challenged from time to time. Also get oneself exposed to maybe news and information that one hasn't seen or heard so far. So it's important to try to get exposure to as many diverse sources as possible.
And with that, I've always felt that if I'm in Sweden in an election year in the U.S., that Swedish media does a better job of covering the realities of the election year than U.S. media does. Do you feel the same way about Japanese and German media? Because of course those media places care a lot about what happens in the U.S. elections. How do you feel that their coverage of the U.S. elections compares to our media here in the United States?
Well, from my subjective impression, I have the feeling that US American media broadcasts a lot of very stimulating or sometimes even emotionalizing information, and using very fierce visuals or extreme ways of portraying certain situations. I think in general German or Japanese media try to go a little bit more balanced way, I would say. But this does not mean that there are no issues at all. But at least what we can say is that in Germany or Japan we have a very strong public service media there, and by their definition and by their mission, they are they are obliged to have a more balanced treatment of different topics, and to integrate more diverse and pluralistic point of views. And as they have a very strong standing in society, possibly also the public discourse tends to be a bit less fragmented than as it is in the US. But nevertheless, there is still room for improvement in Japan and Germany as well. Yeah, well, I think my main concern is that that depending on the outcome, the relationship between the US and Europe, and maybe with the rest of the world, may deteriorate due to the election outcome. And we've seen this already during the last Trump tenure. And I think people outside of the US, and particularly in Germany, are, I would say, slightly nervous about the electoral outcome. And from that point of view, I think it's even more important that that the media provide transparent, high quality and diverse information, so that people can make informed decisions.
Okay, and last question: what would be your suggestions to Americans who are part of the media world in the United States based on what you've seen here? I know that's a very broad question, but in a couple of minutes, do you have any suggestions on what we can do to access more media literacy and to access more free independent journalism?
I think in general, fostering media literacy at a very early stage is one of the key tasks. So teaching young people how to deal with media, how to distinguish fake news or factual news, also how to actually benefit from high quality media, and teach people that they will benefit themselves from high quality information, so that's in the end for their own good. And this part definitely needs to be strengthened in education, I think. And as far as newsmakers are concerned, I think they should not forget that they, in the end, are not doing their job for the companies or for their political party, but they should do it in the end for the country, and in the end for the more universal good. So maybe it's good to remind this from time to time.